This video is going to cover section 7.1. In this section, you're going to really want to go to the notes for chapter 7. It pretty clearly outlines everything that we're going to do today, so it'd be helpful if you wanted to follow along and added examples. So that's going to be your easiest course of action for following through all the different rule changes today. So the word percent just means per 100. So if I look at this drawing right here, the number of pink is the percentage out of 100. So we would just write that as a number. So that's really what percent really means. It just means per 100 or out of 100. So if I write a percent for each of these statements, then it's just outlining again, it's out of 100. So in South Dakota, 5 out of every 100 people work in construction. So that's simply written as 5%. So here, out of 100 acres, 70 acres were planted with corn. So 70 out of 100 is 70%. So that's all they mean. So when I do your tests and quizzes and things like that, it's just out of a total of 100 points. That's what you've earned out of 100. So let's talk about converting percents to numbers. So we're going to divide by 100 and we're going to remove the percent sign. Okay, that's pretty much exactly what we're going to be doing. Converting numbers to percents, we basically multiply by 100 and we add a percent sign. So if you're going out of a percent, you're dividing. If you're going into a percent, you're multiplying. And that's kind of the general idea for today. Now I'm going to give you more specific examples, but basically if you understand that rule, then you're going to be doing really well in 7.1. Okay, so for the first example, we're going to convert percents to fractions. So basically, I'm going to divide, because I'm leaving percents, I'm going to divide by 100 and drop the percent sign. So I want to keep these as a fraction or mixed number. So I don't want to just divide 32 by 100. I want to kind of do it like a fraction. So I want to write this as 32 over 100, and then I want to reduce it to lowest terms. So really, it's 8 over 25. So because I want it to being written as a fraction or a mixed number, I'm going to put it over 100 and reduce rather than just completely divide it by 100. I don't want a decimal, I want a fraction. So be careful with the directions about what they're actually looking for as your end result. So for this one, it would be 150 over 100 because it's per 100. And then if I reduce this, I end up with 3 over 2. Or because it says a fraction or a mixed number, I could have 1 and 1/2. Okay, but again, we're dropping that percent. We're just writing it as a fraction, reduced. Now this one's a little bit harder. You may want to make notes on this one. It is a decimal, so I'm still going to write it as 0.75 over 100. Now this is kind of going back to our last section when we were dealing with ratio and proportions. I can't leave this as a decimal, so I need to figure out my place value for this 5 is hundredths place. So I need to multiply by 100 to turn it into a whole number of 75. Now, whatever I do to the bottom, I need to do, or the top I need to do to the bottom. So I still have to multiply the bottom by 100 as well. And at this point, now I'm able to reduce it. So 75 over 10,000 is going to reduce down to just 3 over 400. So again, this one may be one that you actually want to mark and look at or put it into your notes. Okay. So for this one, I want to convert each percent into its decimal form. So if I want it as a decimal, I'm simply going to divide by 100 and drop the percent, or I can move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. So dividing by 100 is the same as moving the decimal 2 spaces to the left, okay? This is the decimal, 2 spaces to the left. So if I have a decimal here behind the 2, I'm moving it 2 to the left, which is the same as dividing, so I have 0.72. Here's my decimal. If I move it 2 to the left or divide by 100, don't do both, just do one or the other. I have 0.129 as my decimal. Okay, and again, no percents. Okay, So we're going to convert these to decimal form. So in this one, I'd move it over twice or divide by 100, and I have 2.01. This one's tricky because I have a fraction. So if I put 16 1/4 into my calculator and use that toggle key, I'm going to get this turned into a decimal, the 1/4, or I could simply do 1 divided by 4 in my calculator or by hand, and 1 divided by 4 is going to give me a total of 0.25. So then that makes this 16.25%. Okay, it's still percent. So now I'm going to divide by 100 or move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. So it becomes 0.1625. So these are tricky, and I have like one of these on the test. So again, you may want to take notes on that particular kind of problem. For the decimals, it doesn't matter. Again, I'm dividing by 100 or moving the decimal 2 to the left. So this one becomes 0.0055. So we don't need to eliminate decimals, we just need to change them over into from fractions to decimals. So here we're going to go from decimals to percents. So from decimals to percents, we're going to do the opposite, which is to multiply by 100, or we're going to move the decimal to right. And we're going to add a percent sign. So we're changing it into percents, we're multiplying. So again, this is moving it to right or multiplying by 100, and I have 51%, and you do need to label it. So this is multiplying by 100, I have 280%, that's a 2. Okay? So for this one, again, I'm multiplying by 100 or moving it twice, and so I have 100%. For this one, I'm multiplying by 100 or moving the decimal to the right, and I end up with 12.4%. And for this one, again, multiply by 100 or move it right, and I get 680%. So basically, you're just multiplying or dividing. Really, that's all you're doing. Okay, so we want to convert the fraction to percent notation. So this one doesn't particularly tell me right now whether they want it as a fraction or a decimal. So I'm going to show you that you could get multiple answers. So basically I take 5/8 and I multiply by 100. And I can do 100 over 1. I can try it out by hand, or 5/8 times 100 in your calculator, and you're going to get a couple different answers. You could have 125 over 2%. Or you could have the mixed number 62.5%, or you could have the decimal of 62.5%. So any of those three would be a perfectly good answer when we're not asking specifics. So if they're just saying to percent notation, all three of those are percent notations. So again, the same thing with 5/12. I'm going to multiply by 100, and I can get one of three answers. I could get 125 over 3, and again that's percent, or I could have 41 2/3%, or I could have 41.7 and it repeats percent. So I could have any of those, no, not 7, 6 that repeats, 6 repeating, okay? For C, again, multiply by 100. And that's going to give me 100 over 3%. Or, let's see, and then keep going to change it. So you guys can have lots of answers on these. Okay, so I want you to pause and try this one to see what you get, and then come back and check it. So here we'd multiply by 100. We only get one answer on this one, which is 70%, since it's a nice whole number. Okay, if you want to pause this one and try it, We're going to take 1/9 times 100. So we get 100 over 9%. That would be one answer I would take. Or you could give me 11 and 1/9%, or 11.1 repeating percent. So any of those three would be a perfectly good answer depending on what you did. Okay, same with mixed numbers and improper fractions. I'm still just going to multiply by 100. So 2 1/8 times 100 is going to give me 425 over 2%, or I would take 212.5%, or you could give me 212.5%. So again, the answers will vary depending on what you decide to do. For 14/9, again, I'm going to multiply by 100. And 14/9 times 100 is going to be 1400 over 9. Nothing really reduces in that one. So I could take that as a percent, or 155 5/9%, or 155.5, maybe 6%. Okay, so it'll tell you where to round if they want you to do it as a decimal. So for example, in this one, they want us to actually write it as 1/10 of a percent. So this one I don't have much choice. I can't do the fraction. I want the decimal. So when I multiply that by 100, I may end up with a fraction. If I end up with the fraction for this one, then what I want to do is toggle it, okay? Or I can take the top divided by the bottom to get a decimal. And so when I get the decimal, I get something like 85.7142, etc. So they want 10th. So I'm going to look at the 1 here, and that 1 does not round that up, so this is just going to be 85.7%. That's my rounded answer. Okay, so if you want to pause and try this one, again, we're rounding to the nearest 10th of a percent. So I have 3/7 times 100. And so if I multiply that out and divide, okay, I'm going to get 42.857, etc. So the tenths is the 8, the 5 rounds that up. So I'm going to end up with 42.9% rounded.